travelers, the rise of self-service innovations in digital travel, from self-check-in kiosks to intuitive mobile apps, self-backdrop solutions, to initiatives like DG Yatra and off-airport processing. We'll explore how technology is reshaping the passenger experience and making it travel more independent, convenient and efficient. And ladies and gentlemen, to take us through this important and timely topic, it is my pleasure to invite on stage Mr. Sumesh Patel, President Asia Pacific SITA. Please join me in welcoming him with a warm round of applause. Do we have Mr. Patel here with us? Yes, warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So today, what we wanted to talk about is in terms of how technology is helping and empowering us to move and take care of, the passenger numbers which are expected to double. So, we heard this morning everyone saying that the passenger numbers are likely to double, and this was pre-COVID. When it hit us, everyone said that is 2040 a real year where the passenger number will double. But yes, that has really made us to go back in terms of saying, thank you. That the passenger numbers are going to go up, and that creates a bit of a challenge, not just for the airport, but for the entire ecosystem. So what we see is that the passenger profile is also changing. They want to be in control of their travel complete end to end, and not just say maybe while they make the reservation or when they look at the airport. And what also is changing that with the global passenger number growing to almost 90.3 billion by 2041 is also creating several bottlenecks overall in terms of the industry. So clearly one area being the airport capacity, and we heard through our colleagues in JMR this morning that yes, they're investing quite heavily and likely all the other airports, but still that's not enough. The passenger numbers are going to surpass the investment we make into infrastructure. The other challenges with the industry faces is, of course, the employee shortage. A lot of people have moved out of the industry, and then we continue to find challenging in terms of getting the right staff for serving the passengers. And of course, the delays in terms of the fleet, and of course, the drive for us to be even more sustainable. So clearly, what we're looking at is in terms of how the technology plays the key role, and digitalization helps in meeting these needs. We see basically from our perspective that there are four key drivers for the digital travel. First being the traffic volumes, which are growing really fast. Second being the traveler themselves, so they would like to have a digital travel, not just as I mentioned earlier in terms of what they do in the airport, but complete end-to-end. And when we did our IT Inside, we really, 7 out of the 10 passengers said that they are happy to use biometric and digital solutions as they go through the journey. And not just when we look at the passenger, but also if you look at airlines. So if for them to serve and reach the passenger better, they would want to deploy and look at more biometrics right at the time of the booking. And finally, of course, the major pain point where most of the passenger feel is in terms of the border. So how can we digitalize border and have a walk-through experience complete end-to-end? The good news is that if we look at the IT spend, 2019 was the year which saw the highest IT spend in terms of the air transport industry. But last year, that has also, that record was beaten in 2024 with 8.9 billion investment into IT by airlines and airports all over the world. And if you look forward into 2025, even for 2025, there are 95% of airline and airports are saying that they're going to increase their investment or maybe remains the same moving forward. So there's only 5% of airline and airports don't see investing, or they don't see that they're going to make further investment into ATI. So and while we look at these investments, we see that there are three key areas where the air transport industry is making these investments. Firstly, of course, it's cybersecurity, which is a topic that is number one priority for the air transport industry. Second being the infrastructure itself. So how can we look at more self-service, more self-backdrop, more kiosks, more biometric solutions. And finally, looking at in terms of how we can move the technology to cloud, to basically embrace the power of AI and analytics to help plan better. So not just looking at the things, but how can we be more productive and have a better outcome overall. One key area where we are really seeing the industry really moving, and this is across airlines, airports and government, is looking at the digital travel. So how can the digital travel credential help across the entire travel scheme? So first, looking at going from anywhere to anywhere, and this we mean by not just looking at entering the airport and then by the time we board, but even before when we arrive to the airport. So how can you create your digital credential? And that we do really well, for example, in India for DigiYatra. But just imagine extending that even further to your baggage, your hotel. If you're taking a train or a cruise, how can you have the same digital credential across the entire travel ecosystem? And then, of course, looking at the borders and making it more frictionless border. When we look at digitalization, we are seeing the change across the entire value chain, and as I mentioned, not just in a few pockets. So if we start with the first one in terms of boarding, recently we tied up with SITA, so often boarding in terms of moving even before the passengers arrive at the terminal. How can we look at creating a digital credential or integrating various different services at airport touch points? So how can we use the API for airlines and for the other partners to reach out to the passenger even while they're at the airport? Second being the check-in. How can we have a more walk-through experience throughout the check-in process? And from our perspective, when we look from SITA perspective, maybe 10 years down the line, I don't think we will see any more check-in counters or kiosks, because a lot of things will move to mobile and biometrics. So what we need to look at airport a bit differently. And hence, recently, 2 weeks back, we had an acquisition of CCM airports, which are clearly present at, if I look at India, in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Changi, so almost about 300 airports. So how can we look at technology right from design and not just towards the end state when the terminals are built? Bags, these is also one of the key area where we are looking in terms of digitalization and automation, not just where you can drop it anywhere, but how can technology help to identify your bag? So our bag vision uses the AI technology, and also in terms of the technology where it can identify the biometrics of the bag. So if they are lost during the transit, it can reunite the passenger with the bag, even if they've lost the bag tag. How can you do that? And also recently we tied up with Apple. So how can Apple AirTag can be integrated to entire bag journey in terms of your entire end-to-end? So Air India was the first customer in India with whom we tied up, where the passengers now can share their bag tag details, AirTag details if they're flying Air India, and then with a bag journey to trace the bag all over and then help to reunite. The other one is, of course, security and borders. How can we make that, use the same DTC to make a complete end-to-end process? And finally, as I mentioned, in terms of overall experience, it just does not end for a passenger when they arrive at the airport, but for example, how can they use the same digital token to check in, in the hotel, cruise, 2 cruise, train, everywhere. So the entire complete end-to-end technical journey. The other one is, of course, security and borders. How can we make that, use the same DTC to make a complete end-to-end process? And finally, as I mentioned, in terms of overall experience, it just does not end for a passenger when they arrive at the airport, but you know, for example, how can they use the same digital token to check in, to in the hotel, cruise, train, everywhere. So the entire complete end-to-end technical journey. For us, one of the advantages we have is that since we are part of the ecosystem, we work with all the stakeholders, being airline, airport, ground handlers, government. So that helps us to make sure that when we look at any digitalization in terms of the technology, we try to help and take into account the complete end-to-end ecosystem versus looking at in the silos. And of course, you know, with our presence across the globe, we're working with a number of airports, almost about 1,000 airports with airlines and 70 governments, which helps us to understand the challenges and co-innovate and work with the partners with the entire ecosystem. Finally, I would say there are four areas which we see which will help in terms of the tangible improvements for the entire transport industry in terms of digitalization. First, making the journey seamless, and that I mean, as I said, complete end-to-end, and not just maybe while you do your booking or while you have an airport experience or at the border experience, and helping the overall air transport industry to digitalize. And finally, the second part is on the operational efficiency. So how can we use the data and use more predictive technology and helping us to be even more sustainable. And at the end, I would just like to end the presentation with a short video which will try to depict the entire end-to-end journey.
Seeking to provide a better travel experience. It's clear that change is inevitable, and the future of travel is digital. At SITA, we're ready. As the world's first premier end-to-end digital travel solution, we are on an ongoing mission to help the world move better, and to provide everyone with a safe, seamless journey. From biometrics and facial recognition to using mobile technology and verification checkpoints, we continue to innovate for a connected journey across land, sea, and air. Constantly evolving and ready to adapt to stay ahead of the curve. Because the future of travel is now, and we're geared to making it better.